Meeting helped in any way in eliminating the nuclear waste shipments through our area?
I think it's going to have a very positive effect because we had a major subcommittee chaired by Jim Florio of the Energy and Transportation, Energy and Commerce Committee, now focus on the nuclear waste shipments. And we had a very good representation of the New York delegation, including myself, Jim Scheuer, and the both of us have been very active on a bipartisan basis, also Congressman Biaggi and Gilman, where we all made the point very clearly that these shipments should never have been started, and now that they've been suspended, they should not be resumed until we get the study from the Department of Transportation. I think it's just common sense that where there is any risk involved, even though it is minimal, and you're talking about millions of people in the most populated part of this country, why can't we wait until we get the results of a study from the Department of Transportation, which we know is in process? There is an alternative to be explored, and that's the shipment of this waste material by barge across Long Island to New London and then over Connecticut. Obviously, Connecticut members are going to argue very persuasively that it would be better to ship this through New York. But I think if you look at the two areas and the people that are involved, I think not. There's another issue. Some say, well, it's going to cost too much if you ship it by barge. And I say, when you're talking about people and millions of lives, what's cost? And cost has got to be a distant second to the safety of the citizens of the New York City area, where, again, you're talking about millions of people. I gave testimony yesterday, I'd say 5, 6, 7 minutes worth of testimony, and I guess I can summarize as a CPA, a certified public accountant, the bottom line for you in that testimony. Number one point was that the shipments should not be resumed until the Department of Transportation comes out with its study. And we must continue to put pressure on the Department of Energy to do that, as we did before. And I think it was the pressure that we brought, because I did arrange a meeting for a delegation of members to go over to visit with the Secretary, the new Secretary, John Hetherington, about a month ago, and I think that resulted in the suspension. My feeling now is that they shouldn't even consider any resumption until we have that study. That's point number one. Point number two is that we've got to convince and press Secretary Dole, Elizabeth Dole of the Department of Transportation, to quickly complete that study and make the results available. And I think, three, in the meantime, the Department of Energy must tell the people of New York and Connecticut where it stands on the shipments, and you know, if they have any plans at all, and if so, when do they think they're going to resume? My feeling is that we need to know at every step of the way what is happening. We've got one interesting thing that's happened. There was pressure to ship this because there was no space left. I understand they've had some 15 or 16 shipments, and there could be maybe 6 more to go. That means that there is now capacity to continue to store, so we should be waiting for the study from the Department of Transportation.
Okay, and is shipping the material by barge a viable alternative to trucking the wastes?
I think it is. There was a study done by New York City. I believe they hired the consulting firm of Arthur D. Little, which concluded that that was a more feasible alternative because of the much reduced risk to people. I don't think it takes an expert to understand that we're dealing, again, with the most heavily populated area, and any risk, however minimal, applied to those numbers of people is not acceptable. Just think about the Long Island Expressway. Think about the milk trucks turned over. We've seen an accident, at least one bad one a week, and I've heard that maybe it's one a day. They call it the Long Island Distressway. Now, can you imagine we're here in the summer, all the people going to the beaches on Long Island? It just seems to me that we cannot ship that material through those routes.
All right. And can you tell us how the situation stands right now concerning the casks that hold the nuclear waste?
I understand that the purpose or at least the announced reason for the suspensions, was to explore the casks. They're looking at, they believe, and they've said that the casks that they have passed all certification and are safe, but there apparently is a newer type cask that is larger that would decrease the number of shipments, and I think that's why they say they have suspended. My feeling is that this was too much of a political football and they couldn't take the heat, and they realized they had made a mistake. But vis-a-vis the casks, I know that they're studying a cask, again, which is certified, but larger. I can't tell you anything more about that.
Okay. And can you tell us the purpose of your upcoming trip to Israel?
That's a switch in plans. Subjects. Yes, I was in Israel, Gita, in January of 1984. In fact, I was invited by the government of Israel, the former Minister of the Economy at that time, when I had volunteered a plan for economic stability, let's say a strategic plan for the economy of Israel, that they liked very much. And when I went there, I met with the ministers of the economy and finance and Mr. Aaron's defense minister. And the theme of my talks at that time was that military security for Israel is an illusion without economic security. I could very well be giving that speech right here with the amount of waste that we see in procurement, that national security in this country could be held hostage to waste. And in any case, we need a strong economy here to be strong militarily and to be strong for the rest of the world. So the bottom line for me, again, as a businessman, is that I've got to do what I can as a congressman here to continue to make this country strong economically, meaning a balanced budget. And now what I'd like to do is help Israel deal with its internal economic problem. Not that I can help as an outsider implement anything, but if I can help them study where they are right now, I may be able to help them come up with a plan to attract outside capital. Their most critical need right now is to bring in outside investment to keep some 7,000 scientists employed. Israel's Fort Knox is not gold, it's not oil, it's brain power. They have 7,000 PhDs, and they're beginning to lose some of those, the brain drain, to Silicon Valley. They need them more than we do, and I'm trying to find a way to help them address that issue to attract the investment capital, because we have to help this country help itself. Something like Maimonides said, that the way to help people is not to give them a fish, but teach them how to fish. It just seems to me that we can play a role in giving Israel aid right now, which we've done, over $4 billion in grants, and I supported that heartily. And there's a good reason for it. There is no other friendly democratic nation in that part of the world. And I'd hate to think what it would cost this country to mount that battle against Soviet aggression. You can take $4 billion and multiply it by maybe 20 or 50. So there's every reason for us to do it. But at the same time, why not help them also stabilize internally so that maybe in the future they may not need that kind of money, or if they need that kind of money, it would go a lot further. So basically the purpose of my trip is not just a tour. I've been there before. It's to meet with all the new economic ministers, finance ministers, to see what they're doing with the austerity program, to meet with the leaders of the Histadrut party, because labor plays a very important role there, and to see how we can get that inflation down. Their inflation rate is incredibly over 400%, and there's no way that people are going to invest in an environment like that. So that's the purpose of the trip.
Okay, and what will you be doing? Is the last question.
In Israel, again, meeting with key people in the Knesset, their legislature, meeting with the ministers dealing mainly with the economy and finance, bankers, the governor of the Bank of Israel I will be meeting with the the Israeli-American Chamber of Commerce, addressing some business leaders, members of the Histadrut party, and using those 8 days to position myself here in Congress or here in Washington to be kind of the resident expert on what's going on, so that when questions come up about the Israeli economy, I can help. You know, Gita, if you look at their economy, we have a budget of almost $1 trillion. And, you know, we just passed a budget resolution last night. I'm not too happy with, by the way, but we've got to do a lot more than they've done. But when you think about our $950 billion budget, do you know what Israel's total budget is? We can put it in our hip pocket. It's $24 billion. Not much, but Think about this. $11 billion of that is absolutely uncontrollable because it services the debt, Israel's debt. Another $7 billion relates to the military, their defense. And they survive every day, and they can't reduce that. So that leaves approximately $6 billion to deal with all of the social programs. We know that the government, it tends to be rather socialistic. A lot is done for the people. And they're now going through an austerity. So you can imagine how tough it is right now to deal with an austerity program when you only have really $6 billion to deal with. And you can see how important our aid is to Israel at this time and how important it is for us to get them back on their feet, to bring investment capital there. I hope to make a dent in that problem.